Hey guys, welcome to the Optimized Army podcast. My name is Daniel Kelly, and today I'm joined by a very, very interesting guest, and his name is Matt Stevens. Matt, welcome to the show. How you doing, brother?
I'm doing well, Daniel. Thanks for having me, man.
Excellent, excellent. So the reason why I invited Matt onto the show today was I've seen a lot of Matt's stuff on Twitter, and he writes some really, really interesting stuff and thought-provoking content on Twitter. And I thought it would be good to connect with him and for just us to have a chat. I think from the stuff that Matt has written, we share a lot of, we have a lot in common, and we share many of the same views and opinions. And I think above all, Matt's own story of his own personal transformation and how he got into all of this, got into personal training and everything, which we'll cover shortly, is a really interesting and inspiring story in itself. So, Matt, do you want to tell, for those of you people who are not familiar with you, do you want to tell everyone a little bit about yourself?
Absolutely, yeah. So, I basically just coming out of high school doing the regular thing, and that everybody else does. You kind of have this path laid out before you. It's kind of just been. I guess everybody kind of just follows the crowd, and they don't really know exactly what else there is to do, and so everybody just kind of follows everybody down the same path, and it was go to college, get good grades, get your degree, get a good job, get a house, and just, the basic, old school American dream, which, it's outdated now. I think that things have changed by so much that we can't necessarily keep doing the same thing because it's kind of just running us into the ground. It's like, it may have looked in 1965, it may have looked, that Corvette, that 1965 Corvette may have looked, great. But, hey, it's 2019. It was still that same 1965 Corvette, and it just don't look the same now, So it's like we keep handing down this car that is the American dream, and it's like, okay, we've got 400,000, 500,000 miles on this thing now. When are we going to come up with something different, Right. And so went down that route, and I didn't want to, pack on debt. I knew that it was a bad thing, but I didn't know what else to do. And, at some point I wound up, picking up a trade or picking up a skill, trying to do welding, and wound up just having to get back into regular college to finish out my degree. But basically, what happened is, I was in school, I played in a band, and got sucked into the party scene. I had been lifting all throughout younger years, playing football and whatnot. And then after high school was over, after football was over, it was just like, okay, I tried to continue, but it just kind of ran aground because there was no accountability there that I was really used to, and nothing that I really wanted to go for at that point because I wasn't planning on playing college football. So I just kind of stopped going to the gym and got into the band, started playing music. It was a lot of fun. We traveled to multiple states and, just made a living just playing music and going to school. But eventually, it pulled me out of school because I got sucked into the party scene. And once I got sucked into the party scene, dropped out of school and whatnot, I just went around a real big hole and lost my health. I gained a lot of weight. Was smoking weed and drinking a lot of times. There's sometimes some weeks where I'd be at the bars probably 6-7 nights a week. Just partying with people. Life was just a big party. But eventually, it wound up catching up to me. I had a girlfriend at the time who broke up with me. And that really hit me hard. And then, it just came down to one morning where it was, thinking we came back from Christmas break. And I had no money because, a lot of the college students go out of town at that time. So there's no bars having any musicians play. And so I was just broke at that time. So, no money for weed or alcohol. And I just woke up one morning and I looked at myself in the mirror and I was just absolutely disgusted. Like we talked about, it's just this feeling of just disgust came over me. It's like, man, what have I done to myself? What am I doing? Where am I going? Things just are going the wrong way. I've got to do something about this. And I was really serious. It hit me really hard. And so I wound up taking a picture of myself that day in the shape that I was in. And just kind of kept that picture to myself. It was more of a personal thing for me. And knew that I was going to do something, and I didn't know exactly where to start. But, man, I started looking for something. I found the ketogenic diet, and at that point, it was probably the easiest thing for me to do because I was unfamiliar with, counting calories and counting macros. There's so much crap around on the internet around that time where you didn't know what to believe. And so when I found the ketogenic diet and I found all the real reviews behind it and testimonials behind it, I was sold. And so I was just like, okay, well, let's start with that. And I got a lot of I got great results from it. Lost a lot of fat, lost a lot of weight. I think I went down from 216 to 189 at one point. Yeah. And had lost maybe a little bit of muscle mass at that point. But also, one of the things that I did was I started going to the gym. I went to this apartment complex gym. So I was completely broke, remember? And so I had to go somewhere for free. And it was this apartment complex gym it wasn't that bad. You'd be surprised at the equipment that they had at this place. But I remember sitting there waiting for a buddy to come train me, get me back going again because I wasn't doing the same things I was going to be doing for football. And he was a big guy. But anyway, they wound up finding out that we didn't live there, and they kicked us out. And it was just like, well, I can't really stop here. I've already started lifting. And I found out that there was this gym that was across town called Strong Inc. That was charging, college students $99 for 3 months. And I was just like, I can afford that. So I went ahead and went down to the gym as nervous as I was and signed up for a membership. And, man, I'm telling you, you go in there, and it was a powerlifting gym. So you had guys like, strapping into equipment and putting on the serious weight and just yelling. I'm talking about just raw, just lifting. These guys were big. I mean, they would – I'm talking – they had totals around 1,800, 2,000. They're just big guys. So it was like intimidating going in there. I'm not going to lie. Me having just started up again, not even like knowing how to properly deadlift and going back in there. And it was just tough. But I pushed myself. I forced myself to do it. I said, there's no way I'm going back. And, made things turn around really quickly. And that's kind of just what started it. I just kind of continued to go from there. After about my second breakup, I think it was time where I was just like, okay, it's time to get serious again because I had kind of slacked off. I was like, all right, well, I've never had a six-pack before. It's time to get one. And I went out and got a coach, and I signed up for a bodybuilding show. And, man, I was just hooked. I just kept going after that. It was like that challenge is what just feeds me, man. I have to be able to push to see how far I can go. Otherwise, I'm not happy. Like, I have to find something to pursue and something that's going to challenge me, or it's just I'm empty. You know what I mean? So that's just kind of the big start for me. The last few years or in the last year, I've started an online fitness coaching, diet coaching business, just because I've learned so much in the last few years, and I've known what it's done for me and my personal life, and I know that it can do the same for others, and I want to be able to provide that for others. So I'm working up right now trying to build that up and make it to where I can coach others into kind of the same path that I went down, where if they're out of shape, hey, I know what it takes to get back into shape. Let's do this, and people want to invest. I wanted to invest, and it was like I wanted to get that body. It meant a lot to me, and it means a lot to other people. So I want to be able to be a kind of a guide into getting to that point. And it's something that is extremely rewarding for me. And so that's just kind of where it is now. Clientele steadily growing. People are seeing great results, and I'll be having a bunch of testimonials coming out here soon.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for sharing that story. It was a very, very, very powerful story. I think there's a lot of interesting points to talk about there. The first thing I want to talk about in your story, Matt, which I'd like to get your insight on, is the kind of whole analogy that I like to use is the frog in boiling water, right? So the frog in boiling water analogy is where the idea that you put a frog in boiling water for people that eat frogs. Obviously, I don't eat frogs. I'm sure you don't, but French people do. But anyway, the analogy is you put the frog in boiling water, and slowly you increase the temperature, and over time it gets cooked, and it doesn't even notice it. And what I'm going with this is, like, you talk about, and because this happened to me as well, you talk about getting into this party lifestyle and not really paying attention to your health and letting things go to the side, right? And what happens is you kind of get sucked into this lifestyle of whether it's partying or just not neglecting your health, and you don't really realize how bad it's gotten, because it just happens gradually over time, right? So in your case, it happened gradually, and over time, it didn't hit you until you looked in the mirror and you're like, shit, I don't like what I see. It's like a disgusting you. But the interesting point here is that you used that and you almost transmutated it for a better outcome, right? You used the power, that emotion, that disgust that you felt with yourself, and used it in a positive way, and you used it to kind of fuel you in a way, right? Which I think is fantastic. And many people can use that if they know how to channel it properly. But the problem is that most people will look in the mirror and they'll think, oh, I'm disgusted, I don't like the way I look, but doesn't matter, I won't do anything about it. So why do you think that you use that to do something, whereas other people don't?
It's a great question. I mean, the thing is, I just kind of knew that it was my fault. I had got myself to where I was. And as much as I did try to place the blame on others or certain things, or maybe my genetics, or maybe my family, or maybe things that had happened to me in the past and whatnot, it was like, it still came down, okay, well, that's not going to do me any good. I still have the ability to get to where I want to be, because I had already been there at a certain point in high school. I had already lifted. You remember, I had already was in great shape, probably the best shape I'd ever been in while I was training for football in high school, and I just completely let that go. So it was like, I wanted to kind of get back to that. And it's something that I had already experienced. So it may be a little bit different from my situation than it is for somebody who has never experienced it.
Right.
But it just comes down to, I guess, realizing that it's up to you. And you can either accept your circumstances or do something about them to change them. And that takes taking responsibility for yourself. And some people don't get it. I mean, it's just, there's nothing you can do. You try to sell them on whatever, and it's a lot of times people just don't get it. I mean, it goes over their head, and for reasons I have no idea how to explain. It's just, when you do have that type of person, maybe also that you're like trying to help and whatnot, and they are showing you that they don't want your help, you just have to let them go, because you wind up wasting your time and pulling yourself down. So that's just the way things are, I guess, just from my perspective.
I wholeheartedly agree. Life has taught me that if someone wants help, they'll ask you for it. And the old saying is true: you can lead a horse to water, but you can't force it to drink, right? And
Right.
at the end of the day, if someone truly wants to make a change in their life, no matter how hard it is, as in your case, they will fucking find a way to do it. And
Oh yeah.
as you so well put, ultimately, that's what it comes down to. Is the answer to my question is taking responsibility for your life. Now, I think a lot of people confuse taking personal responsibility for blame, and I think they're two different things. You don't have to necessarily blame yourself and make yourself feel like shit or beat yourself up, but taking responsibility for where you are, that is what empowers you to take action and make a difference, right, and change your life. Because what's the option? You can either say, look at yourself and say, I'm paying the price now for all of this hedonism, drinking weed and all that shit. I'm 40 pounds overweight. Woe is me. I'm fucked, fucking fat and ugly and all this kind of shit. Or you can say, okay, it's time to roll my sleeves up and get shit done. It's going to be hard, but I'm going to do it no matter what. And that's the kind of mindset and the approach that you took, right? You went to the gym. And again, this is another thing I think that stops people from really succeeding with their health and fitness, is that they go into the gym. In your case, you went to this gym and you went to a powerlifting gym, and these places can be very intimidating. If you haven't been to like a hardcore lifting gym, and you go and you think all these guys are fucking meatheads and they're staring at you and they're all big and strong, you think, oh shit, that's not the easiest place to be successful in, right? And then if you're normal Joe, like even without the experience that you had of being a high school or a college athlete, then you go into there and then you look at these guys and you're like, oh my God, the difference between where you are and where these guys are so big and so dramatic, that in itself can put you off. And if you have all of these misconceptions, and I will say misconceptions because they are, about these people, and you think they're dickheads and all these kind of things, it's not going to do you any good, right? So it's I think you have to be strong-willed, but at the same time, you have to recognize how much you don't know and be okay with that. What's your take on that?
Well, I mean, also just to make a point of what you said earlier, everyone kind of has their own threshold of what they're willing to take,
Right.
And to where it comes to a point where they're going to have to make a decision to take that responsibility. And where my rock bottom may be right here, the next guy's rock bottom may be down here.
Right.
And so they may be willing to take a little bit more crap than I am, but I just was at the breaking point. I was at the threshold of the crap that I was willing to take, and so that was that. And so it fluctuates and it's different for everybody. So you find someone who is just not willing to take responsibility at that point. If they keep going the direction that they're going, eventually they will hit that spot. And I have had friends that I have tried to help. Not necessarily like gone out of my way to help them, but they eventually ran down the path because I see that they're going down the wrong path anyway. And of course, I kind of predicted that they would hit that wall eventually, and they did. And then when they did, they hit me up, and I was like, okay, yeah, I'll help you out, no doubt. Because the thing is, it's like they're not you, they're not me, they're them, and so they have that different threshold they have of what they're willing to take, and so I can't hold that against them. I would be projecting my own threshold and what I went through onto them if I would try to make them feel guilty about it or whatnot. But just let them do their thing, and when they're ready, help them out if that's what they're willing to do, if they're serious about it. Yeah, going back into that, going back into the gym, it was extremely intimidating because those guys, they were intimidating. I mean, they took it seriously, and I'm talking about like dead serious. And I was just going in there just trying to get back in shape, man. I was like, man, these guys. But they actually wound up being some of the nicest guys I'd ever met. They were so willing to help me, and they went out of their way to talk to me. And I was, sitting there because I'd asked them about, bench press, and I'd asked them about deadlifts and whatnot. They were just all for it. And then, eventually, I think it was about maybe a year that I got sucked into the powerlifting way of life and started doing the big three lifts. And I actually did a competition. And I trained with a lot of those guys. And because I trained with a bunch of guys that were just bull stronger than me, I was able to increase my strength a lot. And I think I wound up getting like just over, I think I got just in between. So it was about 1450 total, which is not bad for having only been in the gym lifting weights for, 2 years at that point, or a year and a half at that point. It is definitely a factor, but there's just a misconception, and you are projecting the way that you believe they are onto them, which is really honestly not fair to them because you don't know. And until you give them a chance and you see exactly how they are, you're not going to know whether they're actually an asshole or they're willing to help you. But for the most part, most people are good people, and they are going to be willing to help you, and they want you there. They want you that the gym is the place where people go to make themselves better. Mm-hmm. And it is to make their lives better and make themselves feel better. So most people that go there want to be around other people who are like that. They see that you're there, you're trying, they're going to help you. I mean, for the most part, I want to say that 99%, there may be that 1% of crappy people that, they're louder than everybody else for some reason. But for the most part, most people that go to the gym are extremely helpful, and it's kind of like I said, a misconception that we have to get over.
I agree, man. I'm a big proponent of this, and I don't know what it is that makes it, and I imagine that you share the same beliefs in this, but I think that what makes people who go to the gym, who are serious about it anyway, that makes someone quite humble, is the fact that it takes a lot of dedication, a lot of discipline, a lot of hard work, a lot of sweat, blood, sweat, and tears, right? So
yeah.
That kind of has a way of molding a person and making a person kind of humble and willing to help others who are genuinely dedicated, because they know how much effort is required to go in and do it. And like if someone comes up to me in the gym, and I've seen this, and I've made many friends in the gym, guys who've helped me over the years. And like, if someone comes up to me now, I'm happy to pay it forward. I want to help people, and I want them to succeed in the small things that I know in the grand scheme of things. If I can help them, and help them when I was coming up, because other people helped me, it's always about paying it forward. And it's a shame that people are put off by the gym, because it can be such a rewarding place, not only from in changing your physique and changing your health, but also from just a mental and a personal, spiritual standpoint. You improve
Absolutely
in discipline, improve your character, and it teaches you to overcome adversity. So I think it's such an amazing teaching tool.
Absolutely.
Awesome. So we talked a little bit about that and your personal transformation. Tell us a little bit about what are the main principles that served you, and you talked a little bit about the ketogenic diet, and you talked a little bit about how the internet used to be full of crap. It still is, actually, I think.
Yeah, there's definitely some crap out there.
Especially when it comes to nutrition and training advice. But tell us about, so you mentioned powerlifting, but tell us about like some of the things that really served you well and helped you in this physical and mental transformation that you went through.
I mean, the thing is, like, for me, gym was therapy. I mean, you walk out of there and you did something for yourself. You also, when you go to the gym, you're raising your cortisol levels. And so when you raise your cortisol levels and you bring them up like that, then they have to come back down. And then the other, chemicals that are in your body are coming back up, and you just feel good. Because the baseline of where your cortisol was before you walked in there may be a little bit further down than after you walk out of there, and it just makes you feel good. You have endorphins that are being released and whatnot, and you feel like you just did something. You accomplished something, and there were days where I spent, especially after my breakups and whatnot, it was just like, that was just a place where I went to just like let it out, I'd be in there for 2-3 hours some days. And, I can't necessarily do that now with all the obligations, responsibilities I have. But, I mean, at least try to get like a good hour in, 45 minutes in if I can. And I've actually become more efficient with my workouts, having to do that. But it was the ketogenic diet was definitely something that helped me. It wasn't something that I considered sustainable. And I'm not necessarily as for it for the most part now, because it was like, for instance, I was on the ketogenic diet for months, and I stuck with it. You weren't going to get me off of it because I was seeing my results, and it finally got down to the point where it was just like, okay, well, my results stalled, and now I got to continue doing this. And I'd go to my grandmother's house, who she's baking all these like goodies and whatnot, like sweets and everything for my whole life that I've always been eating, and now I got to go over there and I can't eat them, and I had to tell her that I can't eat them, and it's like, okay, this is crap. I can't do this anymore. And I think that's kind of when I let the ketogenic diet go, and I was like, no, there's got to be a better way. And I looked and looked and looked, and then I met a few guys from the gym and whatnot, and finally met a nutritionist at my gym who he was actually just a coach, and I told him I wanted to compete, and he said he would train me. So we got to work and dieted down, and he showed me how to do flexible dieting. And from that point on, I was like, oh, this is awesome, because it was like I could eat Pop-Tarts. I could eat the sweets that I wanted. I could eat Nutella. And as long as I was disciplined and limited my intake, it was okay. I would still lose weight. And then, the things that I would just kind of, because everyone has a problem with binging. It's not just, even the pros, they have problems. You got to keep certain stuff away, but when you get to a point where you can only have one scoop of Nutella, but that one scoop just isn't good enough, man, you just leave it on the shelf in the store. Leave it on the shelf. You start learning real quick. You take it home, you're going to binge on it.
That's even for guys who are fit. That's an interesting point that you make, because a lot of people might look at someone like either me or you or a pro bodybuilder or whatever and say, oh, these guys are just so disciplined. That's not me. It's not fucking true. Like,
it's tough.
I get through, like, if I sit down and have a bowl of cereal, like as a treat, I might have 3 big bowls of cereal, or 3 or 4. It's easily done, man. And people sit here and think, oh, these guys have this kind of special mindset. It's not fucking true. We're all human beings at the end of the day. But like you said, what it comes down to is I think in my opinion, the long-term success in the health and fitness game is recognizing that you're a human being, being okay with that, not trying to be a monk, but for the most part, the majority of the time, making the good decisions and the right choices.
Absolutely. I think one of the things that I've learned, especially just within the last year, I'm still learning. You know, I've been in this for about 5-6 years now, and even beyond that, if you want to account my years lifting in high school and whatnot. But as far as dieting is concerned, especially within the last year, I've learned, you know, because I've messed up a bunch of times. Uh, and I've been there. I've beat myself up for it. I've you know, not made a big deal out of it, and you know, I kind of got tired of the whole, you know, shame type thing. You know, I think shame is something that you've done, and guilt is something about who you are. I believe is the difference between the two. And you kind of get a mixture between the two when you screw up like that, and it's like, no, you may be okay. It's okay to be shameful of something that you did, but it's definitely not okay to feel guilty about who you are, because that screw up doesn't define you. And it's like, okay, you're only allowing it to define you if it is. Get back on the horse. You know, you screwed up, whatever. It happens. Did you enjoy it? I hope you did. Now get back on your shit and get back on your calories and get moving again. How many days were you on your calories for? 10? Okay, let's get to 11. Like, seriously, it's just not a big deal. And people, you know, that like I said, the whole guilt and shame thing, it's like that's how you start. Eating disorders. And it's like, you know, when you get emotions and you get psychology mixed in with eating, it's like it's not healthy. You got to be able to just blow it off. Like, okay, you know what? Screw it. You know, today I want a damn donut. You know, like sometimes I do. And I know for a fact though that because I've gotten back on the horse, I've gotten back onto my calories and whatnot. I will be back where I was, and probably even further ahead of where I was within the next 4 or 5 days. It's happened to me. And it's strange how that works, because I'll have gained, you know, 5, 10, whatever pounds, most of it water weight, in that one day. But then to see my weight just start declining back down to where it was previously within just 5 days is just like, oh, you know, well, that wasn't really that bad then, was it? You know? And it's like you learn, as long as you hop back on the horse, you're fine. And a lot of people don't realize that because they just haven't experienced it. And you just got to experience it. Like, get back on it, see that you're going to come back. You may have just needed a break, and that's okay. Psychologically, sometimes we need breaks. I mean, that's another thing that comes into it. And something that has been, as far as the dieting aspects and bodybuilding and lifting and whatnot, is the psychological aspect of dieting. And that's something that has continued to be researched on here in the next few years. We just don't know a lot.
Huge. Yeah, massive.
Yeah. So I honestly can't wait until, you know, we get some data on that, because there are some people that are kind of ahead of the game talking about, you know, recovery diets and then reverse dieting, because that's what I'm having to do right now. Is I'm reverse dieting from the photo shoot that I had last weekend, and I binged for like 3 days. I mean, like that first day, I probably passed 10,000 calories, man. I'm not gonna lie. And I got back on Thursday. Well, yesterday I was back down to 213 pounds or 212 pounds, and I was just at like 208. And so it was like, really didn't make that big of a difference. And I looked great. I still look fine. I'm like, okay, wow, you know, this is incredible. I really, if anything, tried to screw my body up, and it didn't work, you know. And it's kind of just, you know, you just go to, as far as that, to see that you aren't really screwing up as badly as you think you are. It just takes time and consistency to get back to where you were before. But as far as the recovery diet goes, trying to add some fat on after you've gone to a certain date that you were trying to get prepared for and whatnot is kind of the goal of it. And then you reverse diet. Once you get that psychological aspect of, okay, I'm okay with my food now. And there is kind of that threshold where you need to get to that point, especially with your hormone levels and everything like that. Then you start reverse dieting. And it's come up to be much easier for people. That's something that I'm experimenting with myself now.
Awesome. Yeah, I mean, I like what you said. I really like what you said about, we're all learning here. It's not,
Mm.
life is a just one big learning process, right? So we can never say, even if you're an expert in a field, especially in this industry, it's like you don't know everything, and we're always learning. So it's great to keep that humility and recognizing that. I think it's a great point that you make about the psychology of eating, and you're right, because we've only kind of scratched the surface on that, and it makes, and I see this in my own clients as well. It's such a big factor, and people think that when they get into this, it's like when they hire a coach for the first time, they might hire you, or they might hire me, or whoever it is, and they just think, okay, just train, just do my exercises, just follow my macros, and everything will be okay. And then they don't realize how many of these psychological, I mean, I don't know what you find, but for the most part, I find the biggest thing is the psychological roadblocks and the obstacles that people come across, which actually holds them back and limits them, because they might follow the diet for 2 or 3 weeks and then everything goes to shit. And I have to sit down with someone and kind of deconstruct and find out what is the limiting belief that's holding them back here. And many times they'll think they kind of, like you said, they shame themselves for the way that they behave. But I think it comes down to two things: inexperience with it, I think, and that comes with time, and that's okay. And two, I think it's some people don't really appreciate the human psychology and the human condition around it. So what do I mean by that? Basically, like, progress is not linear, right? So
Yeah.
you're gonna have like downs and things like that. But the main thing is, like you said, get back on the horse and being okay with that. And I personally accepted that a long time ago, that I'm not going to beat myself up and shame myself for doing things like that, because I learned after making those mistakes and trying to live like a monk that it was not a nice way to live. And
Nah.
it made me feel horrible about myself, and it definitely didn't help my progress in the gym or my health and fitness goals and one bit. So if you can do one thing, after listening to this podcast, guys, if you can understand that you can let go of guilt and shame, these are such powerful emotions that can really hold you back in life, not least with your health and fitness goals. If you can let go of those, I mean, wow, your progress will be amazing, right?
Absolutely.
Awesome. So that's thanks for bringing those points up. Really interesting points. I think it's worth watching this podcast alone for those points that Matt brought up. But another point that a topic I wanted to brush up on, which is a little bit different, changing gears now, is relationships, Matt. So
Mhm.
I understand that you're also kind of a relationship coach. Is that correct to say?
Yeah, I've coached a few guys. I've kind of more of not necessarily backed away from it, but it's not something that I try to promote as much as I was, because I'm more along the lines of health and fitness and personal development, because I think that it all kind of intertwines. So yeah, knowing a little bit about each, especially having gone through what I've gone through with my particular relationships and the other people that I've helped with their relationships and everything. It all, like I mentioned, it all kind of intertwines. So knowing a little bit about each is, I think, essential, especially to the position that I'm in. So yeah, I do something there.
I agree. Yeah, I mean, I think that's a very good point you mentioned, and because I think what we have a tendency in our society to kind of compartmentalize things, right? So this is the part of my life that's health and fitness. This is the relationship. This is this. This is my work. But you're right. Everything is kind of intertwined, and they all come together. And I myself find myself talking about like relationship issues sometimes in like coaching calls with my clients, because they have something going on in their life or their marriage or with their partner or something, and it's derailing them, and it's like it's stopping them from making progress in their diet or their fitness goals. So it's important to understand that and kind of like help them look at it in a different way. And what I wanted to talk about a little bit with you is, which I think is an interesting topic. um, I think these days we are more, I write about this a lot, we're technologically, we're more advanced than ever. We've got all this crazy shit going on. We've got like computers, phones, we're the smartest race to ever, civilization to ever live, right? But by the same token, you could argue that we have some of the most unfulfilling relationships like in history, right? People are just not fulfilled in their relationships. Why,
Absolutely.
why do you think that is the case, Matt?
I mean, to be honest with you, there's so many variables that go into it. Um, I think we have you have things like third wave feminism, corporatism, the economy, families, the family structures, past experiences. There's just so much that goes into, developing a person, and then also examples being set for younger children and whatnot, that it's really hard to just label one thing. It's kind of everything that kind of goes into it. And so really it comes down to, especially for men, I think it may be a little bit tougher. Women, they're not necessarily, and I tell men, like, listen, you guys are the natural leaders. And so it's tough to be a leader. And for women, of course, they need to be the right hand man, basically. They need to be the co-captain. And yeah, that can be tough at times too, but at least they have the captain and the leader to fall back on. And that's a big responsibility. So I found that most men have trouble holding on that position because they have never even seen exactly what it takes to do that successfully. And they've watched movies that portray this Hollywood aspect of it, and then they are brainwashed by that, thinking that that's how they need to act and whatnot. And then they have even commercials and all this social conditioning of how women and men should be treated, and so on and so forth, that it's extremely confusing for younger people to get a grasp of what actually works. And so it's tough to find out exactly what actually works, because you're gonna have to screw up a few times, and screwing up is kind of discouraging. It's like, okay, well, I really liked that person, and now it's gone. But you have to also realize that it's a numbers game. I mean, you're going to go through them too. You're going to meet people, and then they're going to teach you something, and they're going to go. And so that's some of the I guess major issues that we're dealing with. But there's so much that just goes into it, and it's a tough thing to correct. It hurts a lot of people, and it's something that we do have a definite need for, of being able to correct those certain things, and then developing yourself into the person that you are comfortable with, so that you can attract the person who likes you, the genuine you, the authentic you. That's where the personal development aspect comes into it. So it's kind of all, like I said, integrates into everything. And when you're healthy, your mind is healthy. When your body's healthy, your mind is healthy, and your spirit is healthy. And at that point, you can become a better person, and you can attract better people. So like I said, that's like I said, they're all integrated and whatnot. And so it's kind of helping those people in that aspect as well. But like I said, there's just a lot that goes into it.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. It's not it's not a simple subject that we can hope to do justice even on this podcast in a few minutes, right? There's a lot from a meta aspect. There's a lot that goes into it. So, it's not something that we can easily break down. But one point that you touched on there, which I think is very interesting, is the fact that is leadership. And I've written about this myself recently. It's kind of like what I think a reason behind unfulfilling relationships today is like the lack of masculine, feminine polarity in relationships. And I think that leadership is a core aspect of that as a man, right?
Yeah.
And men have been, many men have been taught or have been confused, or they confuse leadership with almost kind of being, in a way, overbearing or like almost being tyrannical. But
Yeah.
leadership, being a leader as a man, is being decisive and making decisions which are in the best interests for the relationship. Now, that doesn't mean that you can't compromise, or that you can't cooperate with your partner, or that you can't listen. But a core element and component of being a man is being able to lead and make decisions, right? And I think that a lot of men are afraid these days, or even unable, maybe because of their physiological condition. They're so hesitant, probably because they've got low testosterone, but they're so hesitant to make decisions, and they come across as anxious and nervous. And just from an attractiveness standpoint, that repels women like anything, right? A man who isn't in touch with his masculine core and his energy, this is very, very unattractive. And it comes back to what you said before, though. It's like, once you develop yourself, it's counterintuitive, but the more you develop and work on yourself, the more attractive you are to other people. And one point that I wanted to, ask you there was, how does you going to the gym and improving your health and fitness help you in that aspect, do you think?
I think, like I said, the body is the temple for the mind. And so, you hear people say, physicality equals mentality, mentality equals physicality. The fact is, your mind can only be as healthy as your body allows it to be. And your body can only go as far as your mind will allow it to be, because we can push the body pretty damn far. It's really just a mental aspect of, man, are we going too far here? And your mind holds that back. So that's all about, pushing thresholds and becoming a better version of yourself, pushing against those boundaries every day and whatnot. But like I mentioned, when you have a better body, you have a better mind. And when you have a better mind, you can become a better person. You have a healthier spirit, and it makes you more attractive. And so attraction is a huge standpoint. You not only are you attracted more to the opposite sex, but you are attracted to more opportunities. You're attracted to better friends. You're attractive to better people. I mean, it's literally, if you look at it, the statistics show that attractive people have better everything. And so you can increase that attraction by going to the gym and working on yourself. That's how you become better. That's how you become more successful, and it builds those those character traits as well.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I think there's an important distinction to make, is that people often confuse, is that you make a great point which says that attractive people get more opportunities and whatnot. And I think people get confused with attractiveness and physical attractiveness. I think that you have to be like this handsome dude, or the most beautiful person to attract opportunities. You can be an attractive person regardless. If you work on, like you said, if you work on your body, you work on your physical fitness, and it makes you a more attractive person overall. So I think that's an important distinction to make. So yeah, excellent points that you made there, Matt. I mean, before we finish up the show today, is there anything else you think that I should have asked you, or you wanna add? You wanna talk about briefly?
I honestly think that we covered a decent amount. I mean, we're not trying to talk about any type of current events or anything here, but as far as self-improvement, self-development, in health and fitness, and mentality and mindset, and also relationships goes, that's really kind of what I want to become a leader with, and an influencer, and just improve people's lives all through those aspects, especially health and fitness. But slowly but surely, we're adding on to people. We're helping more and more people. So it's just a matter of just continuing to keep going and keep getting this stuff out there.
Yeah, great. I love it. What I most like about your message, Matt, is that it's authentic and it comes from the heart. You're not trying to do any of this nonsense guru shit and say, oh, if you just do this magic thing, you'll be amazing and attractive.
I have been called a guru before.
You've made it then. But
yeah.
In all seriousness, your message, I think, has been molded in the forged, shall we say, in fire. From experience. It's come from hard-won experience in the trenches, and as is mine. There's no substitute for that, and people can see that. So
absolutely,
people can see a lot through inauthenticity, and it's very easy to see. So when someone is very transparent and honest about not only their faults but their difficulties and what they've gone through, I think is very, very refreshing, and we need a lot more people like that, I think.
Absolutely, I agree.
So Matt, for people, if they want to find out more about you, where can they find you? How can they get in touch with you?
Okay, I have a website. It's called realmattstevens.com. A lot of times I'm trying to put a little bit more blog posts on there and whatnot. I have a newsletter that I send things out weekly to, and I connect with people through the newsletter, and you could find that on my website. Also on Twitter, my hashtag is @Matt_S_Stevens. And if you want to follow me on Instagram, it's @MattStevens2_. And so that's kind of where I'm at for social media. Not really big on Facebook, but I've got the other three covered pretty well.
Brilliant. Awesome. Well, thank you for coming on the show today, Matt, and I'm sure this won't be the last time that we talk on it.
Absolutely not. Thanks, Daniel. I appreciate you having me.
Thanks, man.
Have a good one.